John Tavares continues his hot start to the season as the Maple Leafs snap a three-game slide. Hey everyone, welcome to Inside the Leafs. Rob Wong, joined alongside by Toronto Sun Maple Leafs writers Terry Koshan and Lance Hornby. And guys, it's been an up and down season for a lot of Leafs so far this year, but Terry, one player that is looking strong is John Tavares, who at age 35 has 5 goals already and is on pace for over 40 once again in his career. How does he continue to do it at this stage of his career?
Well, I don't know if there's a lot of the guys have mentioned it. So there's a player in the NHL who pays more attention to his day-to-day routine. We're not sure who it is. Even a couple of years ago, I had a real quick chat with Sidney Crosby one day when the Penguins were in after a morning skate. And, we all know what Crosby's like with his routine and everything. And he had made a comment to me about Tavares and what he was like. And even he wasn't at that standard. So that gives you an idea of what this guy does day in, day out. There's a routine that he follows. It was funny, Caden Primo made the comment the other day after the game about John bringing this big suitcase with him everywhere on the road, and no one really knows what's in it. Other than that, it keeps him going or helps keep him going. And it's just part of who he is. Now, having said that, that doesn't just explain why he is the way he is and still producing at this age and closing in on 500 goals here with his next one. I didn't think it would be before the end of October, certainly, but like you say, Rob, his pace is already 40 goal pace, and it's the talent obviously, but the desire. I don't know if anybody works as hard as he does on the ice either. So a lot goes into it, but it's not even a few years where you think, okay, well, he's going to start slowing down. But we haven't had those thoughts now for a couple of seasons, I don't think. And he just comes out and does what he does, and good on him, because, like you said, the Leafs have been up and down, and we certainly haven't seen the best of Austin Matthews. And I know Willie Nylander has his points, but he could be better too. But Tavares has just been solid all the way through for the most part.
Yeah, I guess if we're name dropping, Terry, I saw Gary Roberts last night at the Oshawa Generals game, and he is someone who comes to mind certainly as a Maple Leaf who took incredible care of himself and played well into his 30s based on a very, very tight health regimen and that kind of thing. So I think in looking for players like Terry was to compare to him, I put Roberts up there as well in terms of the certainly in the grit factor. And let's remember, a couple of years ago, through no fault of his own, Tavares, I guess, was I don't want to say a villain, but people were hanging that large salary on him and had the Leafs, overcommitted to him, and was he an albatross more than anything else? And I think certainly by coming back and taking less money, he's been someone who's really, if he wasn't already loved in the city, has certainly taken that extra step both on and off the ice. And the to score, if he does 500 against the same team that Matt Sundin did in Calgary in the same building, that would be a pretty good way to reach that milestone. And to Terry's point, I think there's more to come for this guy. Top 65 scoring in all-time NHL, and maybe I'm sure he hopes some big moments in playoffs to come as well.
Yeah, the Maple Leafs hoping for that as well. He does have one big goal against the Tampa Bay Lightning a few years ago, but we'll see what happens for John Tavares this season. Meanwhile, Lance, Joseph Woll was placed on LTIR last week. Of course, he's been away from the team on a personal leave of absence, but he is back now. Scott Laughton was on the ice. A couple of key players here for Craig Berube, hoping to return very soon. When do you think we might see these guys get into game action? Because I know a lot of Maple Leafs fans are wondering when they will return.
Well, it's a long stretch, I think, for Woll, certainly to start with. The LTIR designation means you won't see him for a while, certainly, and we have no idea really what his physicality or his physical condition is. Has he been working out while he's been back home dealing with his personal issues? How much of a camp did he was he able to benefit from? And, what state is he going to be in mentally and physically when he rejoins the club full time? But great to see him back, and a lot of players are happy to see him back. And hopefully for him, he'll be able to make a contribution. And of course, it creates a bit of a logjam in net. And Caden Primo having two decent games and 2 wins certainly is going to cloud the situation in net, but that's to be settled down the line. And as far as Laughton goes, here's a guy who was probably didn't get a lot of consideration for being a fourth line center. That's probably not why the Leafs picked him up, but that's how things have evolved. And in a Craig Berube system, a bottom six guy isn't necessarily to be considered that all the way through as a four line entity. And certainly the Leafs had a pretty good line built up with him, Steve Lorentz, and Easton Cowan. So we're going to have to see how that shakes out. Unfortunate training camp injury, but here's a guy who could really add something to the Leafs' physical game, which has certainly been lacking up to now.
Yeah, with Laughton, we'll see, right? The Leafs are in Philly on Saturday, and I think he'd probably love to return for that game. He played the Flyers after the trade. There was a game against the Flyers at home that he played in, but he has not returned to Philly yet. So I think the Leafs are back there in January, but you think that Laughton would like to be back in time for that. Maybe that's a bit of a stretch. We'll see after practice today on Monday, and then I guess the Leafs' other practice this week would be Friday in Philly. So, like Lance says, a valuable part. That line had really formed well. I would argue that it was the best line in camp, Laughton between Lorentz and Cowan. A lot has happened since then, of course, and the Leafs haven't been off to a great start, and what becomes of that trio now. But I think the goal is here to ease Laughton back in and see where we can go from there. But I don't imagine it'd be too far off. The injury happened October 2nd. Saturday is November 1st, or just about a month there, and that was the original prognosis, more or less. So we'll see. And then as far as Joe Woll goes, yeah, it's going to be a while. But, I think he gets, to me, the bigger question is what becomes of Primo once he gets up and running. Because, if everything goes well for Joe Woll, he'll be back where he was before. And that'll be that, barring any injuries. So, do you place Primo? I would imagine you place Primo and Weimers at some point as you get claimed. I don't think you want him taking any starts away from the two guys and Hildemir Akiyama with the Marlies. But that is to be determined later. It's just great that he's back with the team. And I think Stolarz saying the other day he could provide a bit of a spark at some point too. So I think the guys are all be happier about that, and even more so when he is back on the ice with them at practice.
I'd quickly add about Laughton Cowan that they've been looking for a spot, for the best spot to get Cowan really entrenched in the NHL, and with a good line mate situation, and that was with Laughton and Lorentz. So his fate, I think, is directly tied to Laughton in many ways.
Yeah, a couple of guys that can add stability to this lineup, but in the meantime, the Maple Leafs will have to fare without them. Another back-to-back this week, first at home against Calgary, and then Wednesday on the road in Columbus. As always, leave your thoughts in the comment section below. For Lance Hornby and Terry Koshan and Rob Wong, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.